Good morning. This is Mr. Roselli. I hope everyone has had a good break, a good spring break, and that you did something fun, interesting, or amazing while maintaining social distancing, of course. Um, I want to talk a little bit today about the short story, St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves by Karen Russell. But before we get into the story, I want to introduce the story by thinking a little bit about poetic tone, or tone in literature, Tone. When we talk about tone in literature, we're basically thinking about how a piece of literature is speaking to us. What images do we imagine when we're reading a piece of literature? What sights and sounds entice our senses? So just like going to a movie, imagine you're in a dark movie theater, it's the cinema, and the lights go off, and the movie starts, and you're plunged into the events of the film, and you become involved in the lives of the characters. We call that a suspension of disbelief, and this feeling that you have when you're watching a movie. I mean, I know I have this feeling. And think about how a movie can affect your emotions, and we call that tone, and that's basically what's going on. So literature can do that too, or even painting. For example, if we look at this painting of a boy that I was looking at, it's from an artist called Sir Joshua Reynolds, and it's called Cupid. It's supposed to be a depiction of the god of love. But notice the tone and how the artist captures poetic tone here. We usually think of love depicted in bright red colors, but look at the dark brown and blacks that are in this particular painting, right? Even his wings are black. So we could imagine the tone that's being transmitted there is one of darkness, one of bleakness. So when we talk about tone, we think about tone, we want to think about what emotions are being transmitted in the story. So let's look more deeply at the story that I've assigned for you this week, and you should be able to see my screen. Hopefully this works. But we can look at very, very easily in this story how the author, Karen Russell, is using tone. Sometimes you see it as poetic tone. So I'm going to read for you the first page, which is page 225, which is basically the same text that I've given to you on Google Classroom. Also, I've provided a YouTube audio of the story that you can also listen to, which I think is helpful for this type of story. So first, let's read. St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves. Stage 1. The initial period is one in which everything is new, exciting, and interesting for your students. It's fun for your students to explore their new environment. From the Jesuit Handbook on Life Under Affect Culture Shock. At first, our pack was all hair and snarl and floor-thumping joy. We forgot the barked cautions of our mothers and fathers, all the promises we made to be civilized and ladylike, couth and kempt. We tore through the austere rooms, overturning dresser drawers, pawing through the neat piles of the stage 3 girls' starched underwear, mashing light bulbs with our bare fists. Things felt less foreign in the dark. The dim bedroom was windowless and odorless. We remedied this by spraying exuberant yellow streams all over the bunks. We jumped from bunk to bunk, spraying. We nosed each other midair, our bodies buckling in kinetic laughter. The nuns watched us from the corner of the bedroom, their tiny faces pinched with displeasure. Okay. So let's look at what's going on here in more detail. So you want to think about what is the setting. What is the setting of this story? Well, the setting is a school. And we can see that in the title, St. Lucy's Home. Right? So this is a boarding school, a place where children would live and go to school, and the story is told through the perspective of the narrator. And we don't have her named yet, but we will. So when I'm thinking about tone, especially in literature, I try to look for adjectives or words that will help me to discover tone. So I'm going to highlight those types of words in blue. All right, so we're gonna make blue our tone word. Okay, so I'm going to write tone blue. Okay. So I'm going to look back at the text, and I notice this word snarl. Snarl. So snarl is definitely a tone word because it gives us a sound. It's a noise. And usually when we think of snarl, we think of a dog or a wolf making a noise, a wild animal. This note in my text. Floor thumping joy. Right? So immediately in this first sentence, we are given an image of what's happening, right? A pack. A pack is a group of children running around, snarling like wolves, right? Like wild animals. Okay. And we see in the next sentence another word that's similar to snarled, barked, right? Usually we think of barked as something, a sound the dog makes. Dogs bark. And then I love this sentence, cautions of our mothers and fathers. When you're a child and you're growing up, your parents tell you what to do, right? So without parents, without the promise of civilization and being ladylike, couth, and kempt, all words that think about what parents do with their children. Be good, behave, do this, do that, right? When parents are gone, what do children do? Well, they tear through things. They go crazy. Right? They throw pillows at each other. And that's what's happening in this particular part of the story, right? Chaos, disorder. And also, like I said, this is a boarding school, so that's the setting. We're in a school, but it's a school where children spend the night, where they live. They're not with their parents. They're being cared for by nuns, right? So nuns are Catholic sisters. Right? And nuns are usually very calm, very silent, and austere, right? Serious. Children tend not to be so serious, right? They're jumping, and we see that in the text. They're jumping from bunk to bunk. What is a bunk? A bunk is a bed, a place where you sleep at night. So all the children are in one big room, and they're all together, and they all have their own beds, but they're in the same room, and maybe there's a door here, and then we have the nuns who are watching. Right, so if I zoom out, I can think the tone of this story is of chaos, disorder, noise, children barking, making sounds like wild animals, throwing things across the room, a craziness going on. But it's dark, right? And we see that in the story. There's no light because they've smashed the light bulbs. Craziness. And they're jumping from bed to bed. Have you ever been to a hotel, for example, and you're in a new hotel room and you jump on the bed and your parents tell you to get off? I love this sentence too. This is a great sentence for tone. We nosed each other midair, our bodies buckling in kinetic laughter. Kinetic is a great word that the author uses. So think about what that word means. Kinetic. It means to be in motion, activity. And this last sentence, I think, is the opposite of what's happening in the story. So I'm going to put it in red. Right? The nuns watched us from the corner of the bedroom, their tiny faces pinched with displeasure. Right? The nuns are not happy that the children are acting so poorly. I'm going to put a sad face. Right? I hope you can read my handwriting. So that's my modeling for you what's going on in this story. And what I want you to do on Google Classroom is I'm going to set up a prompt, and I want you to answer the questions based on what you learned from the video. Also, keep in mind that I'm available Monday through Friday from about 8:30 in the morning to 11 o'clock in the morning through Google Meet. So every morning, check that out. If you want to ask me questions, if you want to have a conversation, if you want to talk about English, if you want to talk about philosophy, whatever you want to talk about, I'm available during that time. Otherwise, send me a message in the normal ways that you do, and let's try to keep things rolling. All right, adios, amigos. Have a great day. Talk to you later. Signing out.